Time now for our second guest today. It's Antoine Fuqua, who is an American film director who you may know for his work in the action and thriller genres. So he made his film debut in 1998 with The Replacement Killers, and a big breakthrough was Training Day in 2001. Now he's directed the third of the Equalizer series, and you're going to hear my interview with him after this clip. And just a reminder that if it ends abruptly, it's because there's more to come in take two. Just a little tease for you.
Who are you? What were you doing on that farm in Sicily?
Told you on the phone, just a guy passing.
Passing through.
That's right.
You don't want to play games with me.
Just having my tea.
Police found multiple dead bodies on that vineyard. You kill him?
I look like a guy who kills people.
I'm warming to the possibility.
Touchette.
Stick around. I'm just getting started.
Me too.
McCall.
Very good. 2 C's, 2 L's.
And that was a clip from the Equalizer 3, and I'm delighted to be joined by its director, Antoine Fuqua. Hello, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So it was a delight for me to return to the world of the Equalizer and, of course, to Robert McCall. But could you start off by briefly introducing audiences to the world of the Equalizer 3?
Well, Equalizer 3 is about Robert McCall, who travels to Italy to right a wrong. And when he gets there, he finds himself having to help some people who can't help themselves in a small village off the coast of Mediterranean.
It's got such an interesting pace for an action movie, because initially we see the aftermath of a really brutal scene, and it's shot so beautifully. You know, we see the sun through the dust and the rays, and it's kind of this gorgeous setting. And then we see what actually happens, the brutality of that a little bit later. So tell us about your decision to film it that way around.
Well, it's interesting because, we in Equalizer 1 and 2, I do this shot where we go into his eye. But because Equalizer 3 is more about his own internal struggles, I decided to not show you how he, without giving anything away, how he got into the farm, and then show you later as he's thinking about who he is as a violent man.
So because obviously there are so many incredible, well-designed kills in the film, seeing the aftermath of it first was really interesting. So how did you kind of decide, how did you sort of sketch that out, if you like, in terms of what you wanted to show the audience of all the different ways that Robert knows how to kill a guy?
Well, that's all one single shot, traveling through the house. So I decided with my DP to be better just show the after effects of the violence, with all the different tools he used present. Without showing you, to save something for later as well. I don't want to give it all away. Got to bait you a little bit.
We were definitely baited. And the film kind of feels a bit kind of weightier in that we find Robert in this kind of turmoil. He's kind of questioning the morality of his vigilantism. And so why is it time for this character sort of to have a bit of a reckoning with himself and a bit of a shift from what we've seen before?
Well, in Equalizer 1, it was more about him finding his purpose. Equalizer 2 is about making peace with his past. In Equalizer 3, being that he's all alone now, his wife passed, Susan's dead, his friends betrayed him. He's in a darker place, and he has to make a decision about, is he doing this more for himself, the violence to help people, or is it really truly for the sake of other people? So he has he has an internal struggle.
And for those who might not know, every sort of hitman that we see on screens kind of has a code. So what is McCall's code?
I think his code would be, it's about helping those who can't help themselves without recognition, without payment. His whole code would be, he has an honor. There's honor in what he does.
What's his reward, do you think?
Knowing that people are satisfied with justice. Yeah.
Yes. Denzel has got the most incredible face. I will never tire of watching him on our screen. So can you tell us about why Robert McCall needs Denzel's humanity and humor, and why it's important that the two are inextricably linked?
Well, Denzel himself is obviously a great person. He's a good friend of mine as well. Mm-hmm. But he actually does things for a lot of people without taking credit. There's a lot of things he does that I know, but he'll never admit to, where he helps a lot of people. Robert McCall is the same guy, really. Obviously, he does it. He's a brutal justice individual, I guess is the best way to say it. But he's a human being. He reminds you of people you know. He's just a normal guy. He's not, he's not fancy. He's not, doesn't have a cape or anything. He's very humble.
Yeah.
So, he's a normal guy.
Actually, speaking of cape, he doesn't have a cape, but he does, his outfit in this is so particular. He has his hat, he has his cane, and he has, that long shirt that he wears. So can you tell us a little bit about the look of Robert McCall in this film?
It's really about simplicity. His look is always in black. He's got a bigger shirt on. He's very comfortable, things like that. You never know what he might have under that shirt. But he, in this one, in Italy, he gets talked into buying some hat and some clothes, a little more color in it, Reluctantly, he buys it and, kind of likes it,
It works for him. As you keep saying, the film is set in Sicily rather than in the US, like in the previous films. And it's such a, it is such a brilliant, it is a cliche to say that a location is a character in the film, but I think in this, it certainly holds true. So what was I know you weren't necessarily so versed in Italy in the same way that Denzel was. So can you tell us what you loved about bringing Italy to the fore and what you really wanted to bring out of that culture?
Well, Italy is such a beautiful place, as you know. Denzel actually introduced me to a lot of places in Italy that I started to travel before we filmed there years ago. But it's just it feels like going back in time. Places on the Amalfi Coast, the houses up in the mountain. It's just art everywhere you look. But it's really about the people, the small fishermen, towns, people who are just farmers who plant olives. It's such a beautiful way of life. And it felt like it was very Robert McCall, the simplicity of it, the beauty of it. Put the camera anywhere and it's just gorgeous, right? And it says something about the history of Italy. So I couldn't have picked a better place.
And part of that history is, of course, the food, because, there is nothing better, I don't think, than Italian cuisine.
Food, the wine, come on.
Yeah, so like the Camorra standing in the kitchen eating spaghetti while they plot how to kill Robert.
It's everyday life, you know what I mean? You eat while you discuss killing the guys. That's their business.
I think that was one of my favorite shots. So in terms of that food and that lifestyle, what did you want to show? Because we have like Robert sitting in the coffee shop, and we have Enzo, this lovely doctor who invites him into his home, prepares him this feast. We see fish. You teach us about fish even in this film. So for you, what was the most important thing to kind of teach your audiences about the food from Italy?
That it's a social event. You share it with your friends. You share it with people. You share it with the old lady that brought him a lemon. It's meant to be shared and to be enjoyed with your friends.
And it's crucial.
And it's delicious.
Yeah, right. It is. And it's crucial that the Sicilian characters speak to each other in their own language. Was there ever a pushback against that? Or do you think the audiences are actually much more comfortable now with multilingual films? Because this does feel multilingual.
I believe audiences are much more comfortable with it. The world is much smaller now with the internet and everything, right? We're seeing things from around the world. We're watching The White Lotus, which was a big hit, where it was all in Italy as well. So those sort of things, I think, help introduce the world to get used to hearing the language and reading the subtitles. It just seems like it's much more authentic to the place.
Is that ever a challenge for you when you're directing in a language that isn't your own?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because, trying to get the emotions right and then talking to the translator to make sure the inflections are all right and the dialogue is right. But also because Italy is all different Italian, which I didn't know. Naples has a rougher edge to it. Rome is one thing, right? Amalfi is another thing, more southern.
Yeah.
So I had to get used to, my ear had to get used to each different texture and rhythm. And then I had to get used to that with my crew, of course, But it takes time. It makes you slow down quite a bit. You have to, and pay much more attention to all the details of the language.
That was Antoine Fuqua talking all about the Equalizer 3. Big fan of Denzel in this. A big fan of Sicily. I really loved that. I was just so happy to just spend time. This is not what I was expecting from an Equalizer movie. I was like, it's just going to be like action, 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 killing, killing, killing. And it was Denzel sitting with a coffee and a napkin. And I was like, yes, why is there not more of this? You know how The Trip is like...
It's two men eating their way
through. Who is it in The Trip?
It's Rob Brydon and
Rob Brydon
Coogan.
and Steve Coogan. Yes. And I was like, screw them.
Yeah.
Bring on Denzel, just kind of like sitting in cafes in Italy.
A 3-hour movie of Denzel Washington just having a tea and reading a book in a small town in Sicily. Up for it.
He's
Absolutely
so charismatic.
He's Denzel.
He just draws all eyes. And when he smiles... it feels so earned, and I love that. I just love his smile. I love Denzel. Tell me, did you love this movie?
I really enjoyed it. So let me kind of tell you where I'm coming from here, because I knew of The Equalizer, but I had not seen any of the 3 movies. So I watched the first one to kind of get to know the character. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Just a perfectly formed little standalone action romp.
Brutal.
Love a bit of those. Really brutal.
Yeah.
Really violent.
I really love how violent these films are.
And obviously Denzel is just an unimpeachable actor. So I recently watched him in Malcolm X, Spike Lee's film, on the big screen at the Film and Film Festival. Just give me 7 hours of Denzel Washington doing stuff.
Yeah.
We'll lap it up. But I had not seen the second one, and I kind of did that on purpose because I'm thinking it's the third one in a trilogy of action films. Do listeners need to see the 2 previous ones in order to enjoy 3? The answer is no.
Yeah.
It absolutely does stand alone. And I actually quite like this mini franchise of action films because on the one hand, it's quite interesting that Antoine Fuqua has directed all 3 of them. Usually they depart after setting the tone. It's a continuation of his creative collaboration with Denzel, obviously starting with Training Day, which coincidentally is also in cinemas now on re-release. Good times for Denzel fans.
Yeah, never seen that on the big screen.
Me either, and I really want to see it on the big screen properly. And it works as a standalone. And there's something, I don't know if you got this feeling, it's incredibly violent.
Yeah.
The thing that I really loved about it, why I had a good time with it, is he's kind of just a nosy person. Roberto in the film, he's incapable of minding his own business, even though he keeps saying that he just wants to mind his own business. Robert, you're not. You've spent 3 movies getting involved in other people's business.
They don't even know you.
Yeah, you don't know them. They don't know you. You have no business with their affairs.
Yeah.
But you insert yourself in their drama because the character decides that it's immoral or wrong in some way and he wants to right things. Small things.
Yeah.
And I kind of love that is the central goofy aspect of it. There's no bigger thing. I think where the Equalizer 3 kind of falls flat a little bit for me is when they try to expand this world and make it more into a conspiracy and the CIA is involved and all this like other jazz. And I know the central character is a retired intelligence officer, which is where he gets all his mad killing skills from and his deep insecurity about his own goodness as a human being. Great material. But it's not that deep.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I think I really enjoyed the Camorra because obviously we have an idea of what the mafia looks like, and I think they did
a
such
very heavily tattooed hot Italian man. That's what the mafia looks like.
Yes, this is what
they love spaghetti.
When they're all sitting around eating spaghetti while they're planning how to kill Robert, I just that was a perfect scene. It was just because we never see that. We never see the McDonald's. Like if it was in England, right, it would be like McDonald's in a garage. That was where they'd be plotting. This is like bowls of spaghetti around a really lovely bit of marble in an Italian kitchen.
It's quite stereotypical.
It's brilliant. I absolutely loved it. What are stereotypes if not having a grain of truth in there somewhere? Is that not what the Camorra do?
I mean, I would never know. And I frankly do not wish to know. I do not want to get involved in other people's business. I'm fine.
What did you think of the reuniting of Dakota Fanning and Denzel Washington since Man on Fire?
Oh, I have not seen Man on Fire.
okay.
But now that you mention it, I guess it has a little bit more gravitas than I gave it. What happened to Dakota Fanning? Where is she up to? I haven't seen her in a long time.
She's been a bit overshadowed by her little sister, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Although it was great to see her return.
Yeah.
I really like Dakota Fanning, and I think I always forget how much I like her until I see her, and I'm like, oh, she's pretty
It
cool.
was a good reminder that she was amazing.
Yes.
But I tell you what, you know how I mentioned that I'm not a fan of this divvying up one story into two overlong films? The Equalizer is kind of a good antidote for that. It's one story. It's like quite a fairly simple character. It's a very, standalone premise. Each one of the movies is a standalone story. So you go in, you don't need any other knowledge.
No.
The movie gives you all the ingredients to
Yes.
enjoy it.
It gives
Have
you
a
the
nice time.
flashbacks as well
It
if you
does.
need them.
Yeah. So you know exactly, and it works even if you don't get the flashbacks. There's like one or two little allusions to some side characters in the first film. They don't really matter that much. So this is my greatest endorsement of this film, is that if you're into action and if you're into action films, this is a perfectly enjoyable film. Obviously, Denzel is a massive, one of our greatest movie stars.
Yeah.
So if you're a fan of Denzel, you like it. If you're a fan of action movies, you like it. I don't know if there's a big Equalizer hive on the internet. I'm sure they're going to dig it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the kills are so beautifully choreographed, and I love the drama that Robert McCall brings because he seems so unassuming, and yet he has this real flair for the dramatic that he loves to crack
goofy.
out every so often. And I kind of love the humour in this because it's embedded in such a different way than something like Mission Impossible, which might be like a one-liner. Or the joke here is this aging action hero who is actually still very believable as somebody who could potentially bring down all of these much younger villains. I did make me wonder. I've just got an email about the Expendables 4, which is coming up. We're quite used to seeing older action men on our screens, obviously Tom Cruise. And what about action women? Like, where are the kind of aging female actors who can do this kind of stuff, who are given these sorts of roles? Do they exist? And if they don't, is it because we wouldn't believe it? And why wouldn't we?
Well, I can only think, would you even categorize Charlize Theron as an aging action star? Because she's an action star in her own right.
I actually don't know how old Charlize Theron is.
I don't know either. And the internet is not working, so we can't look it up. But I also think of Helen Mirren has had some involvement with the Fast franchise. I believe she's in the Expendables too.
She's in Red.
Yeah, Red. That's the one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can think of more people. Oh, well, Angela Bassett, although she's done a bit of action, although that's obviously not what we know her for.
Yes.
Similarly with Denzel, he's done action,
Yeah.
but he's just so much bigger than just one genre. Now, who else am I thinking of?
Because these films do exist, but they're few and far between. It would be interesting to kind of watch a few actors as they get older to see if they will kind of hold that same space that people like Tom Cruise, Denzel, Bruce Willis back in the day have had. It'd be nice to see that.
Well, it's an interesting, I'm just thinking now out loud, and we don't have time to go deep into this thought of what is happening with the genre as it is, because all of these aging 1980s and 90s action stars that are leading these big franchises, I don't think it's because they're aging action stars. It's because they're big movie stars who are sometimes known for their action roles, or sometimes you don't know them for their action fare. So it becomes kind of an incongruous appeal to see them perform those kind of stunts and those roles. But where is the genre as a whole? Like, we've had quite a lot of really big new franchises and successes in that space. Most of them have been male-led. They are great female characters, but they tend to be secondary. Charlize is one of the few that has led her own, Atomic Blonde and a couple of others, her own standalone action films, but they have not become franchises yet.
No, interesting. Food for thought. It's time for the ads in just a minute, Anna. But first, it's time to step once again into our laughter lift.
Oh, God.
Prepare yourself. Hey, Anna.
Yeah?
I can't even get through this one. The video and podcast producer, editor / creator and host of the Evolution of Horror podcast is going to be really angry when he finds out I've replaced our bed with a trampoline. He's going to hit the roof. I'm not sure if you know this, Anna, but I'm actually writing my autobiography at the moment. In fact, I accidentally glued myself to a manuscript of it the other day. Mike doesn't believe me, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
No.
No?
No.
Anna, I had a really depressing email from an unhappy friend who lives in the center of America in a location bordered by Iowa to the north, Illinois, Kentucky and Tennessee to the east, Arkansas to the south, and Oklahoma, Kansas and Nebraska to the west. She says she's in a constant state of misery.
I would like a refund for my time.
Anyway, what's still to come?
Well, we've got our last review of Take One, Sound of Freedom.
We're going to be back after this, unless you're a vanguardista, in which case we have just one question. A girl has as many brothers as sisters, but each brother has only half as many brothers as sisters. How many brothers and sisters are there in the family? For those of you still scratching your heads, the answer is, of course, 4 sisters and 3 brothers. Obviously. So it is time for our Sound of Freedom review, and there is so much to talk about with this particular movie. So let's start with our review.
So to kick off, I'm told that there's been requests to review this film. You mentioned it a little bit before, and just to clarify, the main reason why it's being reviewed this week and not in the week of the 4th of July, which is when it got released in the US, is because now is when it's being released in the UK, and the show follows the UK release schedule.
Yeah,
it's not a conspiracy.
Yeah, Mark and Simon weren't like, absolutely not, we're not covering this. They were just waiting until it was released here. Now,
I've thought a lot about how to approach this review.
Yeah.
And it's quite a difficult one because, so to preface this, as a critic, I don't believe in objectivity because that is literally the opposite of a review.
Yeah.
You're giving your opinion. Your opinion is informed by who you are as a person, where you stand in your life, your biases, your experience, everything that makes you as a person. And the other thing as well is that when you're given a platform to review films, you also have a level of responsibility. And that is reflected in not just what your review says, but what you pick to cover and how you cover it, how much time you give it, how you speak about it. I think it's impossible to talk about Sound of Freedom as a standalone movie by divorcing it from its context. I do genuinely believe that it's impossible to talk about it as a standalone film. I wish it were possible, but it's just not. The only reason we're reviewing this film or why people are even talking about it is not because of its quality or lack of quality or its star power or its director. It's because it is wrapped up in a political controversy that both stems from its association, or some might say co-option, by far-right leaning political figures, such as former President Donald Trump, who has very publicly endorsed this film, and by people who subscribe to very intense, very far-fetched online conspiracy theories about there being a cabal of politicians, Hollywood movie stars, and financiers who operate a child sex trafficking ring. Now, if you want to enjoy going down the rabbit hole of QAnon online, please be my guest.
Go for it.
Go for it. Not going to stop you.
There's a lot on there.
But it does make it unbelievably hard to talk about this film. And it's unfortunate, and I've read interviews with the director where he bemoans the fact that it is now wrapped up in something that is not actually in the text of the film. Now, it's complicated because the film stars a certain Mr. Jim Caviezel, who is very publicly aligned himself with the conspiracy theories endorsed by QAnon and by Donald Trump, and is not just in almost every single frame of the movie, but is obviously in the promotional train of the movie in continuing to talk about these theories.
If you recognize the name, he played Jesus in Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ.
Yes. So the film itself, if you try to divorce it from everything else, which I've tried, but I don't believe it's possible, is quite a bog standard action thriller about this sort of savior figure, very, very knowingly casting Jim Caviezel.
Blue-eyed, blonde-haired.
Yes.
All American.
Very all-American, former, military, former intelligence officer who rallies against his superiors because he wants to single-handedly dismantle a perverse sex trafficking ring operating out of Colombia. And the way that the movie deploys this plot is by making him fixated on two specific children, two siblings who have been captured and are being used as part of this trafficking ring, and he saves the boy, and then the rest of the movie is spent trying to save the girl by orchestrating a big convoluted plot involving financiers and ex-sex traffickers who have repented and building a sex hotel. I'm not even joking. This is what actually happens. Now, the film is problematic just in the text of itself because it is supposedly operating as this call to action to end sex trafficking, particularly kind of rings of child trafficking. But it has also been lambasted by charities and experts in the field who are actually doing real-life work trying to end human trafficking around the world by saying that the film indulges in, and it does from the very beginning, with a montage of kids being snatched on the street by strangers in white vans, basically.
Was that real? Was that...
No.
that was all actor footage.
I believe so.
Yeah.
But also research shows and experts have said that it's dangerously promoting this image that it's the stranger danger, right? That it's strangers on the street who will physically kidnap kids and put them into sexual slavery. Child trafficking, human trafficking in any form is very complex, very politically motivated, very much has to do with kind of personal, economic, social circumstances, much more to do with just like evil people snatching kids from the street. And the film also quite, I think, disgustingly indulges in sort of the gaze of child traffickers. And we're made to see a lot of kids posing for sexualized pictures that are being sold of them. Not a fan of watching that in a movie, and I do find it really contradictory and kind of wrong-headed that then the movie ends with this, a series of texts that are telling us how much this character, Tim Ballard, who's a real person who you can look up, he's a real-life activist who has founded and then exited several organizations that were designed to save and combat child trafficking around the world. It very much elevates him into this position of kind of white savior who is going into different countries, in this movie, in this case, Colombia, and saving the kids almost single-handedly because he is the moral figure, the all-American moral figure who takes it upon himself to be the beacon of light and justice in this depraved world. That's one of the many issues I have with it. The other thing is that, like I mentioned before, I find it problematic to talk about this film on this platform because when you pick a film to platform and to talk about, you are not only promoting it, you are giving people the choice or giving them the indication they should part with their money and their time and vote with their wallets and go and see something or not. Now, there is an interesting side to this story where this film has taken quite a different approach to its distribution. Like the reason it's coming out quite late is because it got, lost in the shuffle of one company acquiring another one, and it, release schedules are quite kind of complicated strategic decisions. It's coming out now. It came out on 4th of July in the States. And at the end of the film, we did not experience this because we saw this film on a screener link. But in cinemas, there was a 2-minute video that shows directly after the film has ended on these pieces of text, like I mentioned, that are elevating and promoting the work of Tim Ballard and the work of the film. And it's asking people to scan a QR code and essentially pay it forward. So buy tickets for people who, quote, might not otherwise be able to see the film.
Yeah.
That has worked. That has put the film in a very, very high box office numbers. It cracked, I think, 20 million in its first week out and released in the States. It's been third after Barbie and Oppenheimer, which is quite a significant achievement that cannot be, underestimated. It's money. But has that translated into bums on seats? The seats were sold, but were people watching it? And that in itself has been feeding into the conspiracy around it and the, frankly, quite antagonistic political wrapping around this film of are people trying to prevent people from seeing Sound of Freedom. They're not. This scheme is working because it's getting money, it's selling tickets, but it does not mean that human eyeballs are using those tickets to watch this film. Now, because of these different things that are surrounding this movie, it's getting too much air for what it actually is. What it actually is a C-level action thriller with very unthoughtful choices directorially, with a very really Z-list kind of celebrity at the helm, with delusions of grandeur and moralizing over things that it actually has not spent any time investigating or any time delving deeper into it. So it is careless and thoughtless, but it is deliberately provocative. And it's provocative in a way that I find distasteful at the least and dangerous at the worst.
So that was masterfully done, Anna. Thank you so much for giving us the surrounding context as well, because I agree it's incredibly important. I want to just hear a little clip from the film. And then I'm just going to really briefly mention a couple of the issues that I had with the film itself.
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's going to pass the drug trade. Because you can sell a bag of cocaine one time with a child 5 to 10 times a day. God's children are not for sale.
We're Homeland Security. You know we can't go off rescuing Honduran kids in Colombia.
Which means she'll disappear for good. Imagine walking into a room right now, seeing an empty bed. What we do?
You quit your job and you go and rescue those kids.
So you also heard there Mira Sorvino, who was intrinsic in bringing about the Me Too movement and calling out Harvey Weinstein. So there's so many complexities going on in terms of the actual filming of this and who stars in it. And Bill Camp, for example, who is one of my favourite character actors, who I see crop up in he's been in everything from 12 Years a Slave to The Boston Strangler to The Queen's Gambit to Joker. Like, he's in every American film going. So he does, of course, pop up in this and have quite a major role in it. There is, at the very beginning of this, like, quite a disgusting Jewish stereotype, which for me immediately set the scene, again, like opposite this blue-eyed, blonde-haired American, the Jewish stereotype paedophile character at the beginning. It just told me exactly what this kind of film was going to be. As in, regardless of whether or not the director wanted all of this QAnon stuff tied up with it, he has made some incredibly nasty decisions in this in terms of casting, in terms of, like you say, the shot. I mean, he's picked an actor who can only do two faces. He cannot act very well in this movie. And it's, he thinks that he's doing emotional, but he's just sort of pouting, doughy-eyed for most of this film. Mm-hmm. He doesn't ring true for me as an all-American action hero, especially when we've seen some really decent action movies, especially when you're up in the same week as Denzel.
Truly.
So just taking it as that, it's a mediocre film. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I think wrapped up with, do you want to spend your money? Where is this going? I'm really glad that you've highlighted everything that you have. I think it's really important for audiences to know. It kind of reminds me when Mel Gibson had a film coming out quite a few years ago now, and I refused to cover it because why on earth would I want to talk about a Mel Gibson film on a national stage? This is not a film that I want to give any kind of air to. Mm-hmm. But if we are giving air to this, I think it's so important that we give the context. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for saying that. I think you vote with your money when you pick what, especially when we're talking about the attention economy and what we're investing our time and our money into. We vote with our checkbook.
Yeah.
Not that anybody uses those anymore.
No, we don't.
Yeah, we pay with our contactless cards, right? And I think kind of making informed choices about knowing where that money is going to is quite important.
I do think listeners of The Take are very discerning, and I think it's time to go over to them now because it is I think the Takes listeners are very discerning, and it's time to go over to them anyway for what's on. Email yours to correspondence@kermodeandmayo.com, and this is Harriet.
Hi, this is Harriet from Samizdat Film Festival. Samizdat is Scotland's first Eastern European and Central Asian film festival, curating retrospective and contemporary films from across the region. We're running from the Centre for Contemporary Arts in Glasgow City Centre from the 12th to the 16th of September 2023 and online through our streaming partner Classici until the 5th of October. Thanks.
That was Harriet from Samizdat Film Festival. Do go and check them out if you're nearby, or even if you're not, go out of your way. Go and see Harriet at the Samizdat Film Festival. You can send your 20-second audio trailer about your event anywhere in the world to correspondence@kermodeandmayo.com. And don't worry about the spelling, I think we've got that covered. And that's the end of Take One. Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you so much to everyone who's listened and who has kind of embraced us over the past few weeks and months. We've really loved it and we've loved hearing your responses.
Genuinely, yes. Thank you so much. I don't think I've ever received so many nice messages about when I've been on this show. So it's been a wonderful pairing. I'm going to miss doing this.
I am as well. But thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's been a Sony Music Entertainment production. The team was Lily Hambley, Ryan O'Meara, Golly Tickle, Beth Perkin was the assistant producer, Michael Dale wrote the guest notes, Hannah Talbot was the producer, Simon Poole was the exec producer. Anna, just quickly, what was your film of the week?
Ira Sachs Passages, of course.
Nice. I'm going to go with Equalizer 3, why not? We've got Take Two coming up. You can hear more from our interviews. We've got more reviews of Cobweb, Glockenluder and Otto Baxter, not an horror movie. So join us over there. Thank you.
Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's Take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would. I have done.
Excellent.